Thank you everyone for coming. It was an awesome show of support, and everyone please sit down. It's super fitting that Dad, he was born and passed and lived his life and was a leader here in American Fork. Greens have been here for a long time, and so it's super fitting that there's still Greens here as citizens, and two of Dad's kids and two of his daughters, two of his sons live here still, and I expect there'll be Green citizens here for a long time. Just share a little bit of information, and then we'll start with a prayer. Alfonso Green, son of Daniel Green, was the one that brought the family over across the plains, and was actually part of the second rescue of the Martin Willie Handcart Company, and helped in the settling of this area. And there's been Greens here ever since. Interestingly enough, my son and I, for his first Deacons activity last week, we went to the Lehigh Family History Center and ran across the first name we came across was a great uncle of Alfonso's wife, Betsy Bonnie Murdoch. His name was Jackson Murdoch, from Scotland in the 1650s. And so he hadn't had his work done yet, and we're able to get that name, and we'll get it to the temple soon. So, and I know that that Dad is on the other side and lobbying for the welfare of our family even now, and working on great things for us and for with and for our ancestors. So anyway, we'll get started. James Delascave, one of Dad's older grandkids, will give the opening prayer, and then we'll turn the time over to Jennifer Delascave, Dad's first daughter, firstborn and oldest of us. She'll give a life sketch, and then we'll open the mic for anyone who has a Jess Green or a Marion Green story, because they, as Kelly put it, they're usually tied together. So hopefully you'll come and share a few minutes, a memory of Jess. Family and friends are welcome to do that. So we'll get started, and we'll start with a prayer.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for the opportunity we have to remember the life of Jess Green. We are thankful for the time each of us had to spend with him. May we remember his service to the city and his school, and the hard work he devoted to those things. We thank Thee that those who could make it here on this day were able to make it safely, and please bless that those of us who mourn will be blessed with Thy comfort and the comfort that others give. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Oh, it's good to see you all here today. I'm really happy that you came, and I'm so happy to see so many family members. So I'm just going to give a little bit of information. I'm not going to tell you the whole life story, because I think there's part of his life story sitting here, and I'm hoping you'll get up and share those pieces. In 1939, my grandma, Marion Green, at the tender age of 44, gave birth to her 9th child. And that was 8 years after giving birth to the child she thought was the last child. I I wish I could tell you that my dad was easy on his aging parents, but I can't. He wasn't obedient or calm or any of those things. In fact, I kind of recall that an aunt once told me that when he was fairly young, could walk, she would tether him to a rose bush in the backyard to keep him from running off. Because at that age, you know, it's harder to chase them down, right? Okay, so my Grandpa Green was a farmer and a rancher. Dad was blessed to grow up chasing sheep and feeding chickens, hunting, fishing, riding horses, and he loved it. It was a great way to grow up. And he had family that lived nearby. He had nieces and nephews that really, truly weren't all that much younger than he was. And so I imagine he's probably the cool uncle. American Fork was a great place to grow up. So he had a lot of good friends, and he kept them for life. As kids and grown-up kids, I think we got more stories when we were grown-ups, but we loved to hear the adventures of he and his, the boys that lived nearby. Our very favorite story, I think, was they used to set up crates, slatted crates, and they would use their BB guns, set each other up on two different ends of big space, and attempt to shoot each other's fingers through the slats of the crates. And Dad was a really good shot. In fact, if any of you have watched A Christmas Story, you know, the mom's famous line, you'll shoot your eye out. Yeah, he actually did that, almost. He shot one of his friends. It went through the eyelid right here and lodged between the eyeball and the bone. And so when the kid came out screaming from behind the crate, they're all thinking he's dead. And he pulls the eyelid out and the BB drops to the ground. That's my dad. And really things didn't change too much when he was a teenager. I really don't think Grandma and Grandpa were as amused as we were when he told the story of his 90-mile-an-hour high-speed chase through the countryside in his Ford Fairlane trying to outrun a local cop. And it ended with the cop going through a fence and into a waterlogged field. Dad didn't stick around to check on him. So when the officer arrived at the family home during Sunday dinner, because yes, it was Sunday and Dad had been taking home some friends from church, my grandpa saw the officer through the windows of the front door, didn't even get up. He just said, "Jess, it's for you," and just kept on eating. Miracle as it is, the cop did not throw the book at Dad, and I don't know why. So, Dad's energy wasn't completely spent on just causing problems for his parents. I did find out from classmates last night that he was on the track and field team through the shot put and the discus, and I had not heard that. So that was a good fun thing to find out. So after high school, it turns out the military was a really good place for a kid with exceptional physical, shooting, and driving skills. Give me just a minute, sorry. He joined up right after high school. He completed basic training and went to officer candidate school. And at boot camp, he could not resist doing one-armed push-ups and pull-ups, and always got in trouble for it and got assigned more push-ups and more pull-ups for not doing it the right way. He was specifically very proud that he was a charter member at just 20 years old of the, and I'm going to read this because I want to get it right. He was a charter member of the 19th Special Forces Airborne of the National Guard. And it was one of the first chartered special forces based in the National Guard. And he loved it. He traveled all over the country. Different bases he went to for different training. He was a marksman, he was a jump and parachute master, an aircraft mechanic, and a combat mountaineer, and more. I believe he once told me that he learned how to build bombs. So, doesn't surprise me at all. And from 1961 to 1963, Dad took a break from the military and he served a mission. He went to the North Central States Mission, and when he returned, he started to work on his bachelor's degree in English at Brigham Young University. And when he was there, he decided to impress a girlfriend by taking ballroom dance lessons. And so he called the school to find out if he could get a good dance instructor. And that dance instructor was a cute, hot redhead named Sandra Reed. And they married in 1971. They apparently had a lot to catch up on with their friends because they brought into the world 6 kids in just 8 years. I came first, and then Jess, 2 other boys, Jared and Daniel, and my sisters, Melanie and Michelle, as the tail end. And we were all sealed as a family in 1985 in the Salt Lake Temple, and my parents were married for 51 years. When I was in 5th grade, my opportunities for dating in high school tanked because my dad got a job at the junior high. I don't remember his actual job title, but the best I can come up with is bouncer and dungeon keeper. His office was known as the Hole, and that was where the kids served attention. And considering his childhood that he had made troublemaking and art, this was probably the perfect job for him because he knew those kids and he understood them very, very well. He loved working with them, and he called those students his kids. He gave each of them a Tic Tac on their birthday. That's why the Tic Tacs are in the lobby. Hope you take some on the way out. And it was not unusual after he retired for kids to still come up to him around town wherever he saw them and shout, "Mr. Green, I need a Tic Tac!" And he would happily share his Tic Tacs, and he loved it. Most of you know Dad's passion was politics, and he was an artful BSer. So it was a perfect hobby for him to be involved in politics. He loved his hometown so much, and he was determined to make it a great place to live. Over a 16-year period, he served on the Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustments. He was part of the Central Utah Project, and he was on the American Fork City Council before he became mayor in 1994. During his 4-year tenure, he was very proud of 2 specific accomplishments. The ones he talked about the most were the building of the new American Fork Library, because we all know how much he loved his books, and the other one was the construction of the Mount Timpanogos Utah Temple. I don't think many people are aware of the part that he played in making sure that the temple got open on time. Right before the open house, natural springs underneath the temple kept flooding the baptistry, and even their engineers couldn't figure out how to make it stop. But with Dad's huge knowledge of irrigation and water, he was able to tell the construction workers what to do, and he made it stop. They got it under control, and they were able to have the open house as planned. He very much enjoyed being a part of that, and that was his favorite part of being mayor. So, summing up Dad's retirement years, he kept an eye on local politics. Believe it or not, he even ran for mayor again, and he managed to even get a few hundred votes in the primary without campaigning at all. He loved having his grandchildren over. He loved them a lot, loved to see them, and he always kept an eye out at the DI for special toys or books that they would appreciate. And speaking of the DI, I went through his receipt drawer not too long ago, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that he was the biggest financier of the American Fork Deseret Industries of all time. I kid you not. So, these last 5 years, since 2018, the last 5 years have been rough as a part of his life. in the past year has been especially hard. Mom has earned her angel's wings several times over as his primary caregiver. She's literally been there 24/7 to take care of him, and she's been amazing. She's been amazing. I personally am so grateful for my family members who stepped up and were there and ensured that they went above and beyond to help Dad stay home in his final months, because that's where he wanted to be. He wanted to be there more than anywhere. And I thank my family members for being there and stepping up and taking care of him. Dad passed away a week ago Friday. He died in the home that he loved, where he raised his family, just down the street and around the corner from where he grew up. And that was where he wanted to go. And I want to thank all of you. So many people have reached out and offered comfort and offered help. We're very grateful for that. As a family, we've lost our father, our grandfather. My sister Michelle has lost her best friend, and my mom has lost her companion of over 50 years. So thank you so much for reaching out. We decided as a family that the very best gift that anyone could give us, and that all of you could give us, are more stories about Dad. He was a true character, and I know if you're here, you most likely have some kind of story, or he affected your life in some way. And so right now, and for those, we're actually live streaming this, so those of you on live stream, we'd like to invite you to share any of your stories on the funeral home's website. But for now, we'd like to open it up for you all, and we hope you'll come up and share amazing stories with us of Dad. Thank you.
I have a lot of fond memories of Jess and Sandra and their amazing family. We kind of palled around with Jennifer and Jess Jr. I had the privilege of going down to Jess's dad's every week. My mom, it seemed like every week my dad or my mom and I'd go down there, and sometimes we'd stay over and get rumbled out of bed by that old train that used to come by behind that house. And one of the memories I have of Jess, and Jess, forgive me because I'm not sure, I'll try to get these details correct, but I remember him telling me that there was always a loaded gun in every room of the house. And he, for some reason, I recall him telling me that, trying to teach me some gun safety. But at the same time, and I can't remember whether this was post-teaching or pre-teaching that he told me this, but at one point he was cleaning one of his guns and it was loaded and it went off. And I seem to remember that it went through just skinned a couple of his fingers. But that was one of the lessons that he told me you don't want to do when you're cleaning your guns, is you want to make sure that they're empty. As I've seen a lot of the rhyme chisels, I remember running through Grandpa Green's house. Jess always threatened us that you don't go in my bedroom. So what did we do? We always went in his bedroom. And if I remember right, I'm throwing Becky under the bus, because I remember running up and down the stairs of that house. And when Jess was there, he'd get mad at us because it was really loud. Going up and down those stairs. And sometimes when we'd show, they'd show up, and Jess Jr. and a lot of the rhyme chisels, we'd show up, and I have memories of this old, it was a garage, and there was Jess's dad's boat in there that looked like a Chevy. It had fins on the back and everything. And I'm not sure whether Grandpa Green built that, or he had it, or he bought it, but I remember that was another thing that Jess told me that I couldn't play in. So we played in it all the time. And then at at my father's funeral, the rhyme chisels reminded me that there was a box of sweating dynamite at the back of his, at the boat, and I have a feeling that that's why Jess didn't want us playing back there. But I remember when Jess would, he kind of reminded me, as I got older, as Laurel and Hardy with the little mustache, the fuzz on his lip, when he find out that Becky Rhyme Chisel and I, or some of these others, I'm throwing her under the bus quite a bit, but we would go up, and if he caught us in his bedroom, boy, he'd wiggle that mustache and he'd squint his eyes. The squinting of the eyes was what told us that we were really in trouble. But I love Jess. I had the opportunity and privilege to go down and visit with him and his family. Jennifer and her amazing husband and a few others, and Jess Jr. were there. I love Jess. He was a good man, did a lot of good. And I'm proud and very pleased to carry the green name as my middle name, because it reminds me of Sandra and her kids and Jess's dad and all the rhyme chisels, and I'm thankful for that connection. Anyway.
So hopefully I can do this. I inherited my father's emotions, and so it happens. So no smiling, no laughing over here, okay? Sandra, gosh, it's so good to see you. You've always been just this super proper, sweet lady. I mean, Jess, he married up, he did. So, but I don't know how much time we got because I could go on forever. So I kind of grew up, Jess was older, and yes, Jess was the cool uncle. Was Jess a renegade? Yeah, and I liked it, so that's the problem. But shooting these fingers, that's a true story. So yeah, we had a lot of fun growing up with Jess. I mean, he was always a cool uncle. He always was there for us and things like that. And I have a lot of, memories with him, but I do love Jeff's. I mean, really, and like you were saying, just a cool guy. I always felt that if anybody knew everything, it was Jess. He always seemed to know, right, Jennifer? I mean, he just knew everything.
He was Siri before there was a Siri.
He was Siri before there was Siri, there you go. Oh, and I was told to tell you my name. My name's Eric Rhyme Chisel, by the way. So we grew up not too far from Grandpa. So Jennifer said to her, Grandpa's story and a Jess story, okay? I'll tell the Grandpa story first. So, when I was younger, I was fishing, and I thought I was a really cool fisherman, and my friends and I were all up there, and I go up and mow Grandpa's lawn, and this is true Grandpa, if you guys, you just have to remember. So anyway, I show up there on a Saturday, mow his lawn, and he has a coffee can there with a burlap over the top of it, and he's telling me that there's these special worms on the inside of it. And I needed to take care of these worms. They couldn't be in the sun for more than a couple hours. They had to be in the shade to stay cool most of the day. They had to be inside at night, so I put them inside at night in the back room. And they had to be kept moist at the top. My friends and I watched these worms like you can't believe, because we had to wait a week before they matured enough to where we could go fishing. No, it gets worse. So anyway, we nurtured these worms. We didn't look at them. We never took the burlap off. And so I had several of my friends, in fact, some extra people come down, and we go down on Saturday to go fishing, and we're all excited for these worms because we wanted to catch fish. So we're all looking over this thing. We pull the burlap off and dig in there, and there were rubber worms. That's Grandpa. That's Grandpa. So here's a Jeff story. So, you know how Jess liked politics, and of course I've always liked that too, and so Jess and I would talk about that a little bit. And just real quick, I was talking to him on the phone, and when he was mayor, and kind of talking to him about that, and he said something to the effect, well, think about it, the American Fork now is they've got their first colored mayor. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, yeah, they've got their first colored mayor. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, I'm green, right? I'm like, Jess, no, it doesn't work that way. That's not what they have colors for, you know, so anyway. But, so Jess, you know, we all love Jess, we're all gonna remember Jess, and we'll keep him in our heart, and for you guys as closer family as sons and daughters and that, you know, you guys are my friends and my family too. And so, just thanks, Jess, for being good to me. Thank you.
Hi, I do have a story.
Who are you?
I'm his first grandchild. Yes. So me and Grandpa would have a scary battle. So it's like we would always try to startle each other a lot. I would sneak up on him and like hide and then jump out and go "Rah!" really loud. And I'd get him really good. Sometimes he'd jump up and he'd be like, God damn it. But, so he'd be upset when I got him. But then when he got me, that was like the best day of his life. Like, he would wait and I'd come around the corner and he'd go, Rah! And I would just jump really high. And he would be like, oh, I got you so good. And I'd be like, no, you didn't. He's like, you jumped so high. And he would just be laughing so hard. And so yeah, that's something that I really remember us doing. Another thing I remember is, I mean, like Jennifer said, he'd always go to the DI and find us things. He would not only find us things, he would fix our things that broke. So my brother would always have toy cars that would break, and he would spend hours at the table working on it until it was fixed. He also found out my mom was making soap, and he went to the DI and started looking for pots and pans for her to use so she could make soap. So yeah, I'm really gonna miss him. I'm gonna miss all of the memories I have with him. Thank you all for coming.
So I'm Eric's sister, Lisa, and so you may understand if it gets a little bit wet here. But, I just wanted to share a little story that it's not just Jess and Grandpa. So Grandma Green, one day, as you can imagine, that Grandpa was often off with the sheep and taking care of the herd, there was a door-to-door salesman that came in. As I recall, it was for a vacuum cleaner, and he comes in and was ready to give his spiel. And to give you another piece of background, when my parents married, one side are the Rhyme Chisels with dark brown hair, and on the other side are Grandma and Grandpa Green, all silver. So with that visual, the salesman comes in and he starts to do a spiel and he says, oh, is that your grandson there? No, that's my son. Out the door he goes. So Jess didn't just get it from Grandpa Green. I'm so thankful that we got to have Jess as our cool uncle. I'm glad he brought Sandra into the family and continued to expand the whole family. We've really been blessed as the extended Green clan to have all of you, and I really hope and pray that you can continue to feel the love, and these memories will continue to buoy you up.
name is Duff Olson. I'm from the Olson clan, but anyway, Greens and Olsons are very tight. I used to come down to Grandpa and Grandma Green's house almost all the time. My mom was Joy Green, and we loved the rhyme chisels very much. They were part of the clan. Anyway, so I just wanted to share with you some things. My daughter, Tiffany, has been doing, we actually live down in Tokerville. She's been doing a lot of green names. And so I'm kind of the genealogy or family history hitman. So if she gives me the names, I go take care of them. And so we've been doing a lot of names and sealings on the green side and the Olson side, but mostly green. And it's been a great blessing. And every time we've just had a very special feeling. We know that they've been waiting for a while. Some go way back. And Jess Jr. mentioned something about Alfonso Green. So my daughter has been trying to find Daniel Green and his wife. We know where they are, but a couple of names, Nathaniel Green, gone. So she even went back to my older sister went back to the cemetery to try to find, went right to the cemetery and was waiting for my parents to get there. And in the process, she was getting on the freeway where, no on-ramp, no merging lane. She got on, 65 miles an hour, she got hit by a car and then killed by a big truck. That was hard for our family to deal with, and we could step back and said, why would God allow that to happen, when she's out there doing His work? But we knew and had a confirmation that it was her time. And knowing my sister, she's been up there stirring things up ever since. So anyway, Alfonso Green left his father, Daniel Green, and headed out west. Daniel Green did not go. And he helped settle American Fork, and an amazing man. And he was told on a couple of times that Brigham Young asked him, I want you to go up. We've got a number of saints. And it was very, very cold, freezing. He says, I need you to go up to Martin's Cove. So his name, Alfonso Green, is in the visitor center at Martin's Cove. So he was part of this, what's called the Second Rescue. So the Greens have an amazing, amazing history. And Olsons, we were just Vikings. We didn't know what we were doing. And I think the Greens had some Vikings too. Anyway, so it's been a great blessing for my family to do a lot of the Green names, and it's been a privilege, and I could feel the spirit every time that we did them, a very special spirit. We just recently did a bunch of 10 sealings, and they were all Greens. So, I love this family. I loved how Grandpa was just down to earth. I loved how Grandma, and you need to know something too. I don't know if you've ever watched the church movie John Tanner. It is an amazing story, and of course Grandma Green's maiden name was Tanner. And so if you get a chance to watch that, I'm not going to explain anything beyond that. It's probably $5 at Deseret Book. An amazing story of our Tanner side. And so I just wanted to share that with you.
A little different. So I'm Kelly Ryan Chisel. sentiments that Eric said. We grew up, we leak, by the way, we leak. But, yeah, we grew up playing at Grandpa's house, and it seemed like every Sunday afternoon, I think when Dad was in Bishopric, we'd always end up over there at Grandpa's house for the evening. Usually extended families, our cousins and stuff, and politics, a lot of politics covered over that kitchen table. But the connection there is Jess was usually a part of that. I remember him being the uncle that, there is still a gap between us, age-wise, but he was the uncle that just seemed to watch out for us. Yeah, he was a character, we know that. But that was Uncle Jess. I wasn't going to share this one, but I think I will. Others have heard it, but I didn't think it was the best one for this. He always told us he had a gold belly button. He wouldn't show it to us, no, he wouldn't show it to us, but we're kidding him once about it. He says, no, he's like, I took it out one time, my bum fell off. Jeff goes, yeah, grab that. Hold the back up in there. And I laugh or I cry, so I prefer to laugh. But I remember Jess coming over even to our house, different times. He'd randomly stop in. I remember him coming up, even from the farm down there, he'd stop in just to visit. Sometimes on a little Alice Chalmers tractor that they'd drive or whatever it was. I remember him coming over and, like in the wintertime, he's always sporting like a sheepskin coat. That was just Jess. And I remember him just being so big. He was just so big, just a mighty man. There his age gets with you got a picture, I'm like, God, I just remember him being so big. Just a big guy. But the Eric's thing, the colored mayor story, we always kid, like I say, our span of life, Jennifer, you talk about, as the kids came and things like that, we'd move, and so connections get a little lost and stuff. So I'm glad that we've been able to reconnect those because there's such a legacy, and that brings up the Tanner side. You cannot think about the Greens without the Tanners. And it just explodes from there. Dad always thought that, wow, when he married into the Green family, just the legacy and the pioneer heritage that came with it. But let me bring this back up here. But back to Jess, some of the younger years before he was married, so he always seemed like he was a wheeler dealer and things like that. So politically incorrect things at the time, but remember he was wheeling and dealing on a TV at the swap meet and somebody, and this is back, I remember color TVs were, they were just coming out. But somebody says, hey, is this a color TV? And he goes, no, it's integrated, it's both black and white. But, and he'd have things like asking about his tractor once, is it a diesel? He said, well, they all diesel when you shut them off, But yeah, going back, I just want to reiterate again what Eric said. We always thought when Jess married Sandra, and I've told her, she's still timeless to me. Just so elegant and just what a blessing to our family. We've always just admired you. And the kids, they just come with it too. So. But yeah, Jess, I don't know if I called him the cool uncle. He was just the uncle that was just, I don't know, maybe that's why I never thought of him as cool that way. He was just the uncle that
great stories. You know, he talked about his college years and some of the stories he'd have up there. He was definitely a character in that way. But we love him, and I'm putting that in present tense. Jess is still with us. Sealings have happened. We have the gospel, and life goes beyond now. This is that little dash that's between birth and death, and what you make of it. And it goes beyond that. I think I'll just stop there. Anyway, thank you. Thanks, family, for having a gathering we can visit and renew our relationships.
My name is Paul Walter, and we were high school chums, Jess and I. I guess the first thing I better talk about is that myth about the outrunning the officer. That is true. I was in the passenger seat. And it started, as I recall, downtown, and it was through town a couple of times, I think. But we end up, I think, out around, and I don't remember the street names. I've been gone from American Forks so many years, but it was in the east side of town. We took off and went south to towards the lake, and then as you get down towards the lake, there's a street that runs across from the road, whatever we were on, over to, and here again I don't remember what it is, but there was a connecting road that came back up into town, and we took the far eastern road down and got on that connector road and went across there, and then we made a right turn onto the street that came back up into the city, and that's right, there was marshland on the opposite side of where those two streets connect, and just slowed down just enough to make a right turn and start to come back into town. And of course, I didn't have access to a mirror, but he looked in the mirror and he says, "Oh my gosh, he's got into the field." But anyway, that ended that chase. But it wasn't long, and I guess the officer went back and he didn't have the license plate number because it was still a fairly new car, and it was of course it was registered, but it was not didn't have plates on. So somehow the officer was able to trace back to the purchase at the dealership, and so the dealership gave the name of Green, and so he came up and just called me and he says, "Well," he says, "he's been here." He said the officer's name, the first name was Vince, as I recall, and Vince let him know that he was okay, even though he went off into the water. But after that, Vince and Jess were fairly good friends.
It doesn't surprise me.
But anyway, it was a very interesting thing. Another story is that Jess and I would go to go to high school together because we both lived in the same part of town. And I'd usually end up walking up to his house, and the plan was is that we would get together and we would walk up to the high school, which was, I don't even know the distance, but it was quite a distance, and so I think we planned about a half hour to do that. But I'd get into Jess's house and I'd sit down at the breakfast table and watch his mom and dad eat, and Jess's dad always had a boiled egg. He had it sitting in a little cup, and he would take this spoon and keep digging down in to get to the egg. But all that time, Jess was upstairs getting ready, and his dad would keep calling him, I think his dad called him Unc sometimes. And he says, Unc, get down here, we gotta go, or you gotta go. And he just kept whatever he was doing upstairs. But he'd always make sure that when he came back downstairs to go to school, there was never enough time to walk to school. And so we always got a ride with Jess's dad up to school, which was very nice of his dad to do that. One other story is after high school, Jess and I volunteered to go to 6 months active duty with the National Guard, which would send us off to basic training and then to a schooling thereafter. And at that time, going to the 6 months active duty allowed us to take 2 years off of our obligation, and Richard Bromley just reminded me that, as I recall, that the obligation was about 9 years, that we had an obligation that we had to serve active or inactive, and this going these 2 years, or this going the 6 months would actually knock off 2 years of that. Anyway, so we volunteered to go to active duty, so we went to Fort Ord, California, and that was for an 8-week basic training, where we would go through the same basic training that the regular Army would go through. And there were times when, towards the end of our basic training, they would give us some real training, and that we would have to get on the ground and crawl under this wire. And all of the time, we were told that they were shooting shells above us, and so they said, you cannot lift your head, you just got to continue to crawl until you get out from under all these wires. And of course we did, we kind of minded at that time. But you know, there were sometimes we would get scrapes and everything, and so I was truly able to tell all my kids that yes, I did serve in the military, and I did spill some blood. So anyway, after our 6 week or our 8 week basic training, we were sent to different schools, and as the last couple of days of our basic training, the commander would come, and we'd all congregate together, and the commander would call out people's names and tell them where they were going to go. And we got right to the end of the assignments, and then he said, "Where's Green?" And Jess stood up and says, "Here, sir." And he says, "Young man," he says, "I have been in the military for 20-something years, and all of the time that I have been here, I've been putting in my request to go to helicopter repair school. And I have been denied or, walked over by however many people that kept me from going to that." And he says, and then on comes a 6-month wonder, is what he called us. And he says, and you get assigned to go to Fort Rucker, Alabama, to go to helicopter repair school. And so Jess was happy about that. I had the opportunity to go to I can't remember, I just told Brumley about this a little while ago. Anyway, Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, and I went to Army Photography School, and so after the 4 months, we were able to come home and then get back to our normal life. I have to say on the program, this picture you see of Jess in the military uniform, I was either to the right or to the left of him, because when we went in together, we also got our pictures taken, next to each other, and it was a fun time. I don't want to belabor this, but I do have one other story to say. During I think it was probably our senior year, Jess convinced me that he wanted to buy an old Hudson. And at that time they made this little Hudson. Normally Hudson, that's an automobile for some of you people. But anyway, this Hudson was a small version, and it was about the size of a Volkswagen, and his idea was we were going to buy it, and as I recall, the price of it was something like $50. And so we got that, and Jess had taken a welding class in high school, so we got there, and we cut off the top of this Hudson to make it a convertible, and somehow got it running. It wasn't running when we acquired it, but we got it running, and so there were a couple of trips we made up and down the street, but nothing ever big come out of it. So but I do remember that we had the opportunity to work a little bit together on that. Anyway, I love you, Jess. A fun guy. I was happy to hear after all these years, and I'm surprised, I say, because I didn't even know about Jess's politics, but I was happy to hear that that he was elected mayor, because I thought that would be a good thing in his life. But so much for all of that. Thanks for the opportunity to give me an opportunity to vent a little bit. Thank you.
Hello. I was going to start my remarks with a joke about bestiality, but I figured that probably wouldn't fly here. But I can tell you right now it's hilarious and you're all missing out. My dad and I had a very difficult relationship. It was very complicated. Wow. Good job. I know. I think my dad had a affinity for the small things, the broken things, and the discarded things. I remember when I was a kid, and as a kid I can't separate my childhood too much from sheep and the raising of sheep, and that's not a bestiality joke, this is not a Wyoming thing. But I remember one time, and I can't remember how old I was. My dad kept his very small flock of sheep down at the field, and some dogs got in with them, and they tore them up pretty bad, and there was one ewe that had a ruptured side, and there just wasn't much that could be done for her. And there was a lamb that had been pinned between its mother and a barbed wire fence, and it had been just torn up. And for weeks, my dad and us, we struggled to keep them alive, and we struggled to take care of them and try and fix them, try and heal them in some way.
so my dad loaded them into his pickup truck. He had this old blue Ford pickup that always smelled like gasoline and hay. And for some reason, he took me with him, and he took his rifle, and we drove out to the middle of nowhere. I think it was out in Cedar Fort somewhere. And it was a really quiet, solemn drive for how long the drive was. And when we got to this destination, whatever destination it was, we unloaded those sheep, and my dad took his rifle, and I could tell how sad he was, and I could tell how hard it was for him. And he looked at me and he said, "What do you think, Daniel? Should we shoot him?" And I thought about it, and I said, if we shoot them, then there's no hope at all that they'll ever get better. And he nodded, and he put away the rifle, and he left them there. I don't know if that was a fate worse than death, or maybe they did get better. But I think that says a lot for who my father truly was underneath his gruff exterior. And I think a lot of the reasons why he and I did not get along is because we were very similar. We are very similar. You know, for better or worse, my father has shaped me for who I am. He taught me to speak the truth. He taught me to stand up for what's right. He taught me to face bullies straight on, whoever they were. When I was being bullied in school, the one piece of advice he gave me was, "Daniel, you don't have to take shit from anybody." And yeah, I tend to agree with him. My father would take us down to the field sometimes where he kept the sheep. And he'd do some work there, and we'd, dig in the dirt and play around, and we'd help out. But there was this road that was just east of the field. And when we were done, we'd go there, and we would pick wild asparagus. And we'd eat it raw. And I don't know why more people don't eat asparagus that way. And then we'd drink from a well back when the water was pure. We'd drink from a well, and I remember him teaching me to, rather than to stick your face in the water that was gushing out, you'd cup your hand and the water would pour into it, you'd drink from the water that way. But yeah. My father brought me art books. He brought me novels. He let me keep so many pets, so many weird pets. Salamanders and hermit crabs and snakes and whatever. I remember there was one time we brought just this enormous water snake home. I kept it in a box under my bed, and it got out. And I'm pretty sure, though, my mom knew it was there. I'm almost positive that she made it escape into the backyard. Because that would be the smart thing. Otherwise, there's an enormous water snake in our house somewhere, probably the size of an anaconda. But yeah, I wish I would have had more time to, spend with my dad in the later years. I wish that my kids would have had the opportunity to know him. Because even though my relationship with my dad was difficult, my dad's relationship with his dad was very difficult. But I always remember Marion, my grandpa, being very kind to me and to my older brother Jess whenever we go and bring him lunch in the afternoons. And I hope that my kids can have that relationship too with their grandfather. My dad carried a lot of heavy stones with him, and whatever you all believe about the next life, whether it's the end, whether we do it again, I honestly hope my dad gets to do it again, and that he can do it without carrying those heavy stones. Because whatever he accomplished in this life, and he did some amazing things, as you've all heard. He did it with the additional burdens of mental illness and of self-doubt. And I think, I just want to end it with, I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful that my dad had the time to be at the junior high and to spend time with so many kids who did have behavioral issues, who were the small and the broken and the discarded things. Because I think those are the things that he cared for most. Yeah. I love my dad. And I am grateful for who he was. And so, yeah, that's all.
I'm Richard Meekum, a classmate of Jess. Became a friend of Jess's back in Harrington School, which is right over there. And then enjoyed his presence all the way to senior high school. Back then it was up on the hill. And I can tell you stories about that, but I want to just briefly to tell you that Jess was a part of the West Side group. I think they call it gangs. I was part of the East Side group, and we always felt inferior because they were cool. But the thing I want to talk about is, it seems as though Jess's car was instrumental. Back in, I'm going to date myself, 1955, I think it was Jess got a Ford Fairlane.
With a souped-up engine.
Say again?
With a souped-up engine.
Yes. So he would go down to the Lake Road and see how far he could lay rubber, and then we would go down and measure it. And I think the longest distance was 100 feet, but boy, that was a hot car. You know, it's been fun to listen to the experiences, the rhyme chisels and the greens, and what a legacy Jess has left. I would hope you grandkids and great-grandkids get a videotape of this and listen to the legacy of Jess, because he was a tremendous individual. He was a unique individual. I could tell other stories, but I'm not going to, because I think we both need the anyway, need the privacy. In closing, I just want to say this world is a better place because of Jess Green. He was honest, he was faithful, and he was a friend. And I say that in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. And yes, we are getting old.
Thanks, everyone. We'll conclude. Jared Green will give the closing remarks, and then the prayer will be given by another one of Dad's older granddaughters, Isabel Charlotte Green, and then after the prayer, the American Fork Fire Department will escort Dad to the cemetery, and where he'll be laid to rest, and final honors will be issued by the Utah National Guard. Jared.
Thank you for all taking the time to show up today. My name is Jared, and I am Jess's youngest son. A little over a year ago, Dad, he took a horrible fall in the kitchen that crushed one of his vertebrae, which led to an infection that put him in the hospital, from the hospital to a rehab center, from a rehab center to the hospital, it just kind of went back and forth. And me and Michelle had the opportunity to go there to visit him at the rehab center many times, and every time we got there, you can imagine what would come out of my dad's mouth. Can you get me a ride out of here? Could you get me? Or he would say, hey, I need to get home. Can you get me home? And finally I had to tell him, look, you have an infection that has to clear up or you could die. And he's like, oh, I don't want to do that. So as stubborn as he is, the infection cleared up, and he ended up back. He was able to come back home. And over the past year, my mom took on the responsibilities that one would take on in an advanced care center. And I had the opportunity to help her over the last year. And God bless you, Mom. Because it was not always easy, it was not convenient, and it was not pleasant at times. But it was a pleasure because we were able to honor Dad's wish to pass in his own home with family, and not in a care facility. Dad had a colorful way of language, as many of you may know. I'll share this story as briefly as I can. I'll never forget the night that my dad called the police because there were some suspicious characters down the street. And the police came. That led to an exciting police chase. Well, around 4 a.m. in the morning, two of those suspicious looking characters made their way back into the family home. One of them had pine tar all over the side of his face and up and down his arm, but they had eluded captivity. The next day we listened to Mom and Dad talk back and forth. Me and Daniel listened to it and would hear him recount the story. We just kind of looked at each other, and that was when he was mayor of the town. And years later, after my mission, I was able to recount my side of the story. that those suspicious characters were me and Daniel. And he called the police on us. We were undetected because we'd stuffed our beds very well with pillows and whatnot. And you can imagine what my dad said to me. He said, well, I ought to give you a swift kick in the butt, but you're too old now. Another one of his favorite sayings that us kids heard a lot, whether it was the three of us together or one of us forgot to walk our bike back to the yard after he told us to, or we didn't come in at the right time for playing. He would, his favorite thing to say was, "There'll be a new face in hell looking for supper if you don't." And you can fill in the blank. But, underneath it, Dad's tough shell, he always had his own way of showing us kids that he loved us from simple things. And when we would walk in the house with, in the winter barefoot, he'd always be like, you better put some socks on or you'll catch cold. Or we go outside, you better cover up your head or you'll get sick. So he made sure we were all taken care of. He cared about us. He took care of us in sickness with his various things he would give us when we were ill. And, he cared. He built Jennifer an ice skating rink that became the envy of the neighborhood. All of us got the opportunity to skate on that, but he took time to do the little things.
I remember him outside at night spraying that with the hose, watching him out the window every night spraying that with the hose.
Yeah. He perfected it. He figured out how to do it. Well, I'll never forget when we were little kids and he wanted us to see the biggest steam engine in the United States was going to pass not too far, just 100 feet from where we are sitting here, over on those tracks. And he made sure we were all there. He laid down pennies on the track so we would all get a smashed penny from the... I wish I still had it, but it was the little things that he did that counted. He was with us during the Still Day. He would take us and participate in the Still Days Carnival. And I still remember every year we went there, since I weighed the least amount, I was right in the middle of the tilt-a-whirl. He sat on one end, two brothers, or Jennifer was on the other end, and I got smashed because he said, he would shout, "Okay, it's going to the right, turn to the right. Okay, left, left." So I was getting smashed back and forth. His favorite ride was the octopus. I remember that they don't have anymore.
Or watching a parade on Grandma's front porch.
He did. We would watch he would participate in the Still Days parade when the house still existed there, and now there's a car lot. My dad also built us a castle. How many kids can say that? He built us a castle on the north side of the property. He spent hours grinding giant pipes down, making the squares on the top look like an actual castle. And us kids enjoyed playing on that over the years. One day I couldn't have been more than 6 years old. I watched my dad out there working on the, grinding away, or welding and grinding out in the shed. I had no idea what he was doing, but I was having fun doing what I was doing, playing in the yard while he was out there in the shed. And all of a sudden he comes walking up to me and he says, "Hey Jared, how would you like a sword?"
Yeah.
And he handed it to me, and of course I was like, "Yeah." And there it is. I still have it.
I remember you beating me with that sword. That's one special sword.
Well, To be honest, the sword when he built it was just, the blade was straight, but I beat it against so many things, now it's curved.
Your little sisters.
This sword was made for a much smaller hand all those years ago. But the tender feelings are still present from the little things that he did for all of us. I'm going to close it up there and just say, I love you, Dad. I love our final talks that we had, even to his last moment, the last time I put him to bed. Dad said, as I was lifting him up to put him to bed, he said, "Can I do anything for you? Do you need anything?" Yeah. And, I was like, of course, I could use $1 million, Dad. And, to joke, and he's like, "Oh, come on, cut the shit. You need anything?" And he was always gracious. When I would put him to bed, he would always say, "Thank you so much," as I walked out the room. I'll end on this, my patriarchal blessing said, and I never understood until now, it said, "You will show your sustaining strength for your parents in their advanced years." And I never knew that it would be literal, that I would literally be lifting my dad. And I'm grateful. It was a pleasure to do it. And it is going to be a pleasure to lift him one more time. Love you, Dad.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. We are so grateful to have so many people here to love and celebrate the life of Jess Green. And please bless that we will have a great day and have, thank you for these great memories, and thank you for letting us share those, and please bless we will all get to the cemetery and home safely, and I say these things in thy Son, Jesus Christ's name.
Everyone to please stand. I'd like to invite those of you who've been asked to be our cast of bearers to step over to the worship, please.